The hogs were squealing again. That infernal sound rolled down the slope just before dawn, scraping across the trees and leaping like a curse over the frost. A squeal like that never meant just feeding time. It meant rot. It meant death. It meant another settler's mistake had come to claim its toll before breakfast. And this time, the stench of spoiled meat crept right up to her door, like an accusing finger. Martha didn't flinch at the noise. She was elbow-deep in frozen soil, kneeling just outside her cabin, her wool skirt soaked through with melting frost. Her breath curled from her lips in soft steam as she dragged the last flat stone into place, sealing the narrow entrance she'd built into the hillside behind her home. No one but her knew how deep it went, and no one asked. They just laughed. They said her hole in the ground was wasted effort. They called it the widow's tomb once, when they rode past and saw her hauling buckets of clay and stones with sleeves rolled up and her face set hard. But their laughter had grown quieter since October. Now it came in glances, half-smirks. No one said much about it anymore. Not since the first snow hit early and hard, and two neighbors lost all their preserves to premature spoilage. Not since Mrs. Harrow's root cellar caved in. Not since the preacher's wife opened a barrel of salted pork only to find it green, crawling with flies, sealed under mold like a coffin left in the sun. Imagine the horror in her eyes at seeing maggots writhing in what was meant to be her salvation. Now they just watched in silence. But Martha hadn't built it for show, nor for pride. She built it the night her husband died, when her hands still shook too badly to hold the baby, and her belly was too hollow to cry. She built it because she knew what cold could take, and winter was only beginning. She'd come to the frontier with nothing but a mule, a child who didn't survive the journey, and a man who lived just long enough to dig the first post holes of their dream. He took a bad fall in frozen mud, fractured spine, and died without a word. He left her with a shovel, a patch of trees, and neighbors who smiled pityingly until her back was turned. She didn't go to church, didn't gossip, didn't beg. That made them uneasy. Instead, she built one log at a time. The cabin, the fire pit, the chimney half stone and half patched with clay. Then she started digging. She chose the north slope right behind her home, where the sun barely touched in deep winter and the soil stayed dark and packed. For weeks, she worked into the cold nights, digging until her palms bled and her boots cracked at the soles. When the wind howled and others warmed themselves with company, she kept at it by lantern light, shoveling quietly as the woods froze around her. She lined the walls with stone, gathered them herself, fitted them carefully, laid a double roof, one timber, one clay, buried it under 2 feet of soil, built narrow stairs downward, and a flat stone door to seal it. Inside, she drove hooks into beams, set low racks, and even a stone shelf at the back for the buttercrock she hoped to afford come spring. By the time snow arrived, it was colder than a well, but dry as bone. She stocked it with what little she had: salted pork, turnips, potatoes, and a small clay jar of honey traded from a passing merchant. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers, and it would keep. But oh, the terror that would come when others discovered her ingenuity left them in ruin. By mid-November, the other cabins were already in trouble. The Harrows' salted beef turned brown. The Petersons' apples froze to mush in an improperly vented root cellar. The Sullivans' entire cornmeal load went bitter from damp. Each time, someone rode to town in the early hours, bundled and panicked, hoping to buy back what they could from the general store. But shelves thinned fast. With the stagecoach stuck in the pass and no fresh freight for 2 weeks, there was little left but pickled eggs and regrets. Martha didn't ride to town. She didn't need to. She still had what she'd buried. And when she pulled it out, it was cold but whole, dry, untouched. She ate quiet, slow meals by her fire, boiled turnips, thin strips of salted meat, fresh bread baked with her last flour. And when the wind screamed through the trees, she leaned back and listened to the hogs' squeals again, farther down the hill, knowing full well they wouldn't last another week. The suspense grew. When would envy explode into violence? The first time anyone asked for help, it wasn't with words. It was the preacher's wife knocking with stiff, pale knuckles, eyes a little too wide, cheeks hollowed by quiet worry. She didn't beg, didn't cry, just said they'd misjudged the frost and the barrel hadn't kept. She offered to trade a patchwork quilt and a small crucifix carved by her son. Martha didn't blink. She nodded once, vanished into the slope behind her home, and emerged with a slab of pork still wrapped in dry cloth. The woman stared at it like gold. "You can come back in 2 days," Martha said, and closed the door. After that, they stopped laughing entirely. A week passed, then 2, snow heavy, then calm, then nights so cold the air cracked when breathed too hard. Cabins groaned, chimneys froze over, and the general store boarded up after someone stole the last crate of coffee and a sack of oats. Martha lit her lantern and carried it down into the cold earth, where her pantry stayed dry, her supplies firm, and not a single mouse had dared dig through. She'd learned, after all, stone floors, no clay walls, tight but vented, never too deep, never too shallow, just deep enough to hold the frost like a secret. And in the dark, she whispered her own prayers, not to God, but to the woman she'd once been, the one who hadn't known what death could take. She thanked her for digging, because now every knock at the door came softer, more desperate, and her food was still safe. But danger lurked. Envy seeped like poison through the neighbors' veins. The knocks came more often after that, soft at first, polite, a quiet tap just before dusk, as if they didn't want others to see. But as December sank its teeth into the valley, the sounds grew harder, louder, urgent. By the second week, Martha stopped asking who it was. Faces rotated like shadows on a dial. The preacher's wife again. Then young Thomas Hall, barely 17 and gray with cold. Then the Norris boy, holding out a tin mug without explanation. Even Mr. Jacobson came one evening, tall hat in hand. Pride swallowed so deep it nearly killed him to speak. "My wife's coughing blood," he said. "A warm meal might." He didn't finish. Martha nodded. She always nodded. Took no payment, asked no questions, just ducked into the slope and returned with what she could spare. A strip of dried meat, a biscuit wrapped in cloth, a small crock of preserved carrots, sometimes even a careful pinch of salt. They left silent, ashamed, but grateful. She'd built the pantry for herself, but now it fed half the valley. Yet no one offered to chop her wood. No one patched her roof. No one brought extra nails or asked how her own health held through the storms. Their respect had limits. She was still the widow, still odd, still someone they could accept help from but not truly thank without stinging their pride. That was fine. Martha didn't want pity. She wanted her land to survive the freeze. She wanted her firewood dry, her roof sound, her pantry untouched by mice, damp, or envy. But envy had a way of creeping in colder than any frost. And it came first through a boy's eyes. The shock. A child lurking in the shadows, ready to betray. Eli Harrow had always been a watcher. 14, lanky, all elbows and suspicion. And since the day his family's root cellar flooded, he'd made a quiet habit of trailing Martha from afar, especially when she ventured beyond the trees. She noticed him once standing behind a black pine near the creek as she hauled ice. His coat too big, his eyes too sharp. "You hungry?" she asked. He didn't answer. "Then go home. This freeze will steal your toes if you let it." He vanished like smoke. But the next week, she found fresh tracks near the back slope, small boots in snow, circling her pantry entrance, multiple days from different directions. Someone was spying. She reinforced the stone lid, made the latch quieter, less visible. She started carrying a hatchet tucked in her belt, not for show, but just in case, because hunger could twist a boy, and envy even more. 3 days before Christmas, the McIntyre cabin burned to the ground. No one knew if it was the chimney or spilled lamp oil, maybe both. All that remained were wet ashes and a family of 6 crammed into the old schoolhouse, shivering under every coat they could find. Their food stores had been inside, barrels of lard, oats, jerky, dried beans, all gone in an hour. The schoolteacher, Miss Trudy, came knocking the next morning, tears on her lashes, voice trembling. "I don't ask for me," she said. "Just the children, the littlest ones gone pale, and their mama not doing much better." Martha gave her butter. Real butter from the crock, kept near the cold wall in her pantry. She wrapped it in burlap and placed it gently in Trudy's shaking hands. "Use it quick," Martha said. "It won't keep out there." That butter was worth more than gold. At any other time, it might have bought a full week's supplies, but she didn't hesitate. And that act started the whispers, the shocking revelation. "She's got more down there. I saw it. Her pantry's unnatural, a pact with the devil. She's got more down there," they said. I saw the lantern glow late past midnight. She's still digging. Who keeps butter in a hole and doesn't sell it? She's not starving like the rest of us. That pantry's unnatural. The word unnatural spread faster than frostbite. Mrs. Norris muttered it to the trader. The trader whispered it to the postman. The postman told his wife, who told the Jacobsons. Suddenly, the same neighbors who once knocked softly now eyed her pantry like it was cursed or charmed. Something unholy, something not rightly earned. They couldn't explain it. And what people can't explain, they try to tear down. It happened on the night of the blizzard. Winds screamed down the slope like wolves. Snow drove sideways, thick and sharp as broken glass. The air stung every breath, and the forest moaned under the weight. Trees bowed beneath their own bones. Chimneys clogged, roofs cracked, and still, 3 shadows moved in the dark toward Martha's slope. She was awake, hadn't slept in days, not with the storm pounding like a drum and her bones aching from firewood chores. She was mending mittens when she heard the crunch. 3 steps, then a scrape, then another. She didn't light the lantern, didn't speak, just grabbed her coat, pulled the hatchet from the doorframe, and eased the door open silently. Snow hit her like a slap. She stepped into the white and followed the tracks. Fresh prints, 2 large, 1 small, leading straight behind her cabin to the pantry lid. There, frozen in the act of lifting the flat stone cover, were 3 figures. 2 men, 1 boy. Eli Harrow stared at her first, eyes wide with terror. The 2 men turned slowly. One was Jacobson, the other Hall, the boy's father. No one spoke. No one had to. The guilt on their faces was carved deeper than any frostbite. But their hunger, pride, and need had overridden whatever decency the cold hadn't already stolen. She didn't raise the hatchet, didn't scream, just stared, let the silence drag, let the wind fill the space between them. Then finally, she bent down slowly, gripped the lid, and slammed it shut so hard snow jumped from the trees. "Don't come back," she said. "Next time I won't be so kind." Jacobson's mouth moved, but no words came. Hall touched his son's shoulder and turned. The 3 vanished into the storm like embodied shame. The suspense peaked. Would they return with greater force, or would fear stop them? No one visited for days. The cold deepened. Frost turned trees to glass. The schoolhouse chimney collapsed, forcing the McIntyres to share space with the preacher's family, crammed into one uninsulated bedroom cabin with 1 blanket each. Word spread that the Jacobsons were rationing snow water and burning books for warmth. The Harrows, someone whispered, had nothing left but boiled pine needles and floor scraps to chew, but no one knocked. Not now, not after the storm, because now they feared her. Or perhaps they feared the part of themselves that had stood ready to steal from a woman who'd fed them. Either way, they stayed silent, and Martha didn't mind. She rationed herself, never taking more than needed, cooking only what the fire could hold. And each day she checked the pantry entrance for footprints, the stone, brushing away snow. Her pantry stayed dry, her food whole. While every other cabin fought mold, rot, collapse, or hunger, hers stood firm, anchored by cold earth and choices made when no one believed in her. But winter wasn't over. One early January morning, as the sky turned that pale frozen blue signaling even colder nights ahead, she woke to something she'd never seen. The pantry door half lifted, stone ajar, a smear of blood in the snow, and tracks leading not away but deeper into the woods. The prints were small, erratic, blood-spotted but not gushing, not a fatal wound. More like a gash on hand or foot, perhaps where frostbite peeled skin or a nail tore prying something open. But they were fresh, still wet in snow, heading where no sane settler went in deep winter. Martha stood over them, wind biting her cheeks, one hand clutching the lantern, the other gripping her hatchet so hard her knuckles ached. Someone had broken in, not stolen yet, but the door opened, and they'd fled. Worse, fled into the woods, not toward a cabin, toward safety, but into darkness, trees, and bone-deep cold. She should have turned back, locked the stone tight, waited for the next storm to cover tracks. No food was missing, she'd counted. Hooks full, butter crock sealed. Not a rack shifted, jar cracked. Whatever scared them off had worked. But she couldn't ignore the blood or the print size, too small for a grown man, too erratic for clear thought, a child or near it, chilling her more than the wind ever could. The mystery deepened. Who was the wounded intruder, and what horror drove them into the deadly forest? She layered on what she had: wool coat, scarf, mended gloves, and tucked 2 biscuits in cloth in her pocket. Not planning a long absence, but knowing what it meant when someone vanished into these woods in January. They wouldn't last the night. She followed the trail without a word, telling no one, knowing what neighbors would say. Let him freeze. Let him learn. She was owed silence after all they'd done, wasn't she? But something in her, the part that once clutched a dead baby on the westward trail, that built her pantry with grief-numbed fingers, wouldn't let her turn away. The tracks weaved, crossed a narrow stream twice, looped near a fallen birch. Half a mile in, they paused. A small bundle of cloth caught in a drift, a child's scarf, brown with red edging, handmade, old. She knew it. Martha bent, turned it in her fingers. Jacobson's boy, Eli, she nearly swore aloud. The last one she'd want to find like this. The same boy who'd stood by her pantry, eyes wide with stolen hunger. Who'd trailed her silently for weeks. Yet still a child. And the haphazard loops in snow told her he wasn't just stealing anymore. He was fleeing someone or something. She quickened her pace. Tracks closer now, as if limping. Blood stopped. A good or terrible sign. Hard to tell. Wind sharpened. Trees thinned. Then she saw it. A small lean-to, half collapsed. More brush and sticks thrown into shelter shape than properly built. At first glance empty. But smoke. A thin wavering line rising from beneath a snow mound near the base. A hollowed stump smoked like a chimney. She heard movement inside. Soft, uneven breathing. She crouched, hatchet ready, called low, Eli. Silence, then a weak, childish cough. Mrs. Martha. He sounded surprised, ashamed. I'm here, she said. You're not in trouble. Brush rustled. He emerged slowly, wrapped in a thin blanket. Cheeks raw and chapped, lips cracked. One hand swaddled in stiff, bloody cloth. The other clutched a tin cup. I didn't take anything, he said, voice breaking. Didn't even eat. Just wanted to see if it was real. Then I saw Pa watching, so I ran. Thought he'd. His voice trailed off. Martha's heart didn't soften, not yet. But she crouched beside him. You're bleeding, she said. He nodded. Tried climbing the stone from the back. Slipped. Caught a nail or something. Wasn't thinking. She reached out, examined the hand carefully. Shallow cut, half frozen already. Painful, but survivable. You'll lose fingers if you stay out here. I can't go back. Why not? He looked at her then, eyes glassy, not from cold, from shame. They said it was my fault. Then I told people about your place. Made others jealous. Pa hit me. Said I'd better fix it. Should have taken something. Proved it real. Shown them before they came. Said I should have broken in before it got resealed. Martha inhaled slowly. They sent you to steal from me. He shook his head. Said I should fix what I started. Wasn't supposed to get caught. Just in and out. She stood, paced once. You came out here thinking what exactly? Eli looked down. Figured I'd run a day or two. Let him cool off. Maybe find a trapper trail. Make my way somewhere. Didn't plan on the cold getting this bad. It won't get better. I know. Pause. Wind hissed between trees. Then she asked, Did you tell anyone you were going? No. That was the first good news she'd heard all morning. She took him back, not because he deserved it, but because she knew what it meant to be alone in the cold with a body too small to fight and hands too raw to hold a weapon. She gave him one biscuit from her pocket as they walked. Told him not to talk. He didn't. At the cabin, she ushered him in, stripped his outer coat, rubbed his hands raw to restore circulation. He didn't cry once, just flinched and bit down as blood flowed again. You'll sleep in the loft, she said. Eat what I give you. No wandering, no questions. Look at the pantry without my say-so, and I'll toss you out for the wolves to finish what your pa started. He nodded, wide-eyed. She believed him, but still watched, slept boots on, hatchet by the bed. For 3 nights, the boy barely moved. Then on the 4th morning, a knock, 3 sharp raps. Too confident for a begging neighbor, too casual for one seeking aid. Martha opened slowly. Jacobson stood there, hat in hand, gun on belt, smile carved like a wound. The climax approached, the final confrontation that would change everything. Jacobson didn't look cold. That was the first thing Martha noticed. Cheeks not wind-reddened. No frost on his collar, snow on shoulders barely settled. He hadn't come far, meaning he already knew where to go, meaning he'd been watching. Heard you might have taken in my boy, he said, voice easy like thick honey. She said nothing. He glanced past her shoulder into the dim cabin, where Eli, if sensible, remained hidden in the loft. Wife's worried sick, Jacobson went on. Thought he wandered too far in the storm. Figured maybe a bear or cougar. He let it hang. Imagine our surprise when someone said they saw him heading this way. She met his eyes. You beat him for telling the truth. He smiled tighter. I disciplined a boy for making up fairy tales about magic holes while folks starved. You told him to break into my pantry. He shook his head slow. We told him to check if it was real. That's different. No, she said, it's not. Another pause. Jacobson's smile didn't change, but fingers twitched on his hat rim. Boots shifted, a show of patience, not nerves. She knew men like him. Built strength from others' failures, saw apology as weakness, lone women as opportunity. Holding him in there, he asked, leaning slightly. He's resting. You know, I got every right to take my son home. No, she said again. You had that right before sending him to freeze for your pride. Jacobson's jaw worked once. Then he stepped back and eyed the slope. Impressive what you built. Real clever. That pantry of yours. Got the whole valley talking. Folks say it's the only reason anyone's still alive down here. Martha didn't reply. Jacobson's voice lowered. Lots of mouths to feed, and you've got more food than you know what to do with. Never turned an honest mouth away. He chuckled. Make it sound noble, but it's pride all the same. You give when it suits you. We need more than scraps from your table, widow. We need to share properly. You mean take it. I mean stop pretending one woman with a shovel and stones gets to survive while others don't. His face settled then, not ugly, not violent, just calm. Got 4 families ready to back me. Give us half the stores. We'll forget the boy business. He comes home. You keep your cabin. Keep half your food. That's fair. She leaned against the doorframe. You come back with those men, she said, you'll walk home alone. Jacobson squinted. That a threat? No, she said. A warning. Then she shut the door in his face. Didn't watch him go, knew the sound of retreating boots on packed snow well enough. And sure enough, hours later, cracking the shutter to spy the trail below, she saw him head to the Harrow cabin, then Peterson's, and as dusk fell, 6 figures, men bundled in wool and pride, gather at the schoolhouse edge, where firewood smoke rose like a beacon of desperation. She had a day, maybe 2. They'd wait for the next storm to cover tracks, then come, not to beg, not barter, but take. You understand what's happening? She asked Eli that night as wind rose again beyond the walls. He nodded. He'd heard enough from the loft. I ain't going back, he whispered. Not even if they drag me. You're not going anywhere, she said. But you need to help. She pulled a box from under the hearth. Nails, leftover barbed wire, iron scraps, a small sack of gunpowder traded from a trapper 2 winters back. Know how to use a hammer? She asked. He nodded, eyes wide. Good, she said. Then let's make sure they remember who they're dealing with. They worked till fingers cracked. First, she rigged the stone pantry lid with a second inside latch. Then moved half the dry goods to a hidden cold cellar beneath the pantry shelf, barely 2 feet high, known only to her, under false floorboards and gravel. The rest packed in canvas sacks, stowed in the cabin crawl space. Nothing visible on racks. Then sealed the pantry as if untouched. Let them think it's empty, she told the boy. Desperation blinds men. But if they open it and find nothing, it buys time. Time for what? To decide what they're willing to burn for a lie. She wasn't ready to kill them, not yet, but ready to make them bleed. She set tripwires across the slope, hidden under loose snow. Sharpened sticks angled downhill to pierce boots, rigged fishing line bells, iron scraps and brush for warning sounds. Eli helped without flinching. When she asked if he was scared, he said, They stopped being my people the day they left me in the snow. That made her pause. She remembered the day she became something other than one of them too. Not dramatic, just silence, a gap in smiles. Refusal to help bury her husband. A moment no one spoke as her baby turned blue, and she dug the grave alone. That's all it took. That's what made her a widow before her time. The storm came heavy and loud. Wind battered shutters. Ice snapped branches clean. A tree somewhere cracked and fell, echo rolling like thunder down the hills. She didn't sleep. Neither did Eli. They sat backs to stone by the hearth, watching the door, listening, waiting. Just before sunrise, the bells chimed. 3 rings, silence. Then snow crunch and soft boot creak nearing the slope. The boy didn't speak, didn't move, just looked at Martha with wide dark eyes, holding breath. She dimmed the lantern till the room was dusk-like, her breathing slow and silent. Only hearth light now, low, flickering, casting tall broken shadows on plank walls. Hatchet already in hand. Rifle, unloaded but convincing, against the doorframe. Outside bells stilled, but that didn't mean gone, just waiting, watching, trying quiet movement. Basement, she whispered. Eli nodded, crawled under floorboards, slipped between hidden beams, curled far in the crawl space. She dropped the rug over the hatch, slid the bench atop. In darkness, it looked like nothing. Another crunch outside, closer, not slope but front porch. She took one long breath, stood behind the door, waited. The knock was polite, 2 quick taps, not Jacobson style. Then the voice. "Miss Martha, please." It was Mrs. Peterson, weak, tired, unmistakable. "I brought the children." Martha's grip faltered half a second, memory returning. The Peterson girl, hair matted with cold, coughing too hard in church to stand. The boy with frostbitten ears in wool scarves. She opened a crack, just enough to see. There they were, Mrs. Peterson in soaked shawl, little ones pressed to her skirt. All 3 shivering. No one else. No brush sounds, but her neck prickled. Martha wasn't fool enough not to recognize a decoy. She opened wider. "Get inside," she said. The woman hesitated, then rushed in, ushering children. They stumbled over the threshold, cheeks raw, eyes hollow. Martha closed and bolted fast. Mrs. Peterson turned, lips trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then the rear crash, pantry slope. Bells screamed, latch groaned, boots skidded, silence. Martha didn't wait. She hauled the door bar, shoved it open, stepped into wind with lantern blazing. 3 men crouched at the slope. Hall, Jacobson, Harrow. They'd pried the stone. False floor visible, empty as planned. Hall reaching in, Jacobson above watching with that smug look. "Thought you'd hidden it better," he said, seeing her. "But figured even you weren't cold enough to keep kids down there." "I hid the food," she said. "Not the heart." He laughed. "Well, fine. Hand it over now, or we take it. Either way, you're done." Wind howled around. Then Jacobson's face changed. He looked down too late. Plank snapped. Wire pulled tight. A small clay pot tipped from the slope side, spilling ash, salt, black powder into the chute. It didn't explode, but didn't need to. It burned. Rush of fire and black smoke poured up, catching Jacobson's coat edge, flaring his sleeve. He howled, staggered back, arms flailing. Hall dove aside, screaming. Martha raised the rifle, not to shoot, but to look like she would. "Get out now." Jacobson rolled in snow, batting flames. Hall already running. Harrow hesitated, met her eyes, heaving chest, gaping mouth like begging forgiveness. She didn't blink. He turned and followed the others into trees. Flames burned quick, just a scare charge to blind and scatter, but it worked. The slope safe, and what lay beneath too. She turned back to the cabin. Mrs. Peterson stood in the doorway, pale, tears on cheeks. "I didn't know," she said. "They said if I just got you to open the door, they'd—" "I know," Martha said. "It's done." Inside, the children had curled by the hearth, small bodies drawn to warmth without words. She closed the door behind. For the next week, no one neared her land. No knocks, whispers, neighboring chimney smoke. Snow-covered tracks, buried shame. She tended the children quietly, washed wounds, fed from stores, told dark time stories as wind failed to press cold through stone walls. And Eli no longer slept in crawl space. He sat by hearth, sharpening sticks to kindling, helping unasked. Sometimes watch door, sometimes slope. He was different now, harder perhaps, but not cruel. "You're not going back," she told him one night. He didn't argue. By February, the Harrows were gone. Jacobson, too, left cabins like tombs. Word spread via remaining travelers they'd headed south to warmer valleys, leaving shame to rot with spoiled hoarded food and earned debts. Others came to Martha slowly. Miss Trudy, a one-eyed old man with broken tool wagon, a young mother with twins and no milk. He wasn't a boy anymore, not entirely. And he'd stopped asking if she'd send him away. That was enough. "Then go get the shovels," she said. It became pattern. By summer, more arrived. 3 families, handful of single men, 2 widows, a trapper with frostbitten fingers who couldn't hold a rifle but could stack stone like a mason. They didn't form a town officially, no signs, no name. But something grew, cluster of spaced cabins. No church yet, no school, but communal fire pit where folks brought stew or salted fish. Children ran trails where wolves once did. And at the center, Martha's pantry, no longer hidden, no secret, but not abandoned. They didn't use it for storage now. It had served its time. Sealed for warm months, kept clean, cool, quiet. A few clay jars of salt and lard it back just in case, but mostly it sat like a shrine, a reminder. Newcomers came to her. Each family wanted their own, and she taught them. All of them. Not for money, not trade. Just in that same plain voice she'd used when Eli asked all those winters ago. Dig it where sun won't touch. Line with rock, not just logs. 2 vent holes, not one. Slope the ceiling or it'll drip by December. And for God's sake, never leave meat on the bottom shelf. They listened because she'd lived it. Late June, she found herself standing with Eli on the ridge above the valley. They'd gone to check treeline for bear signs, but paused as wind rose. Both just watching. Cabins below looked smaller from up there, softer, like matchboxes pressed into land. Yet each had rising smoke. Each a sloped patch behind now. Not every pantry perfect, but all existed. That meant something. You think it'll hold? Eli asked. All this. She didn't look at him, just gazed across hills. If the earth holds, she said, then so will we. He was quiet a moment. What if another storm comes? It will, she said. Not pessimism, fact. Storms always come. The trick is being ready when they do. Later that summer, they held the first pantry supper. Didn't call it that at first, just shared meal. But the name stuck, because every dish came from something preserved, dried, cured, pickled, or smoked. No fresh harvest yet, but preserved life. That was the point. Martha sat by the fire watching children carry jars. Men argue whose beans spoiled least. A woman missing 2 fingers play mouth harp under stars. Someone passed her a plate. She didn't ask what was in it. Didn't care. It tasted like survival. Late fall, before first snow, Eli finished the second pantry. Deeper, room for 2 families' goods. Built with help from a boy named Jonah and woman named Ruth, who wouldn't have spoken last spring. Now they laugh like cousins. Martha stood at threshold, tested the door. Sealed clean, tighter than her first ever had. Eli watched her face. Well? He asked. She nodded. It'll hold. And he smiled. Not like a boy, not even quite a man, but like someone who knew what it meant to build something that could save a life. First snow came lighter that year, just a warning dusting. But pantries were ready, and so were the people. They had jars, hooks, stones, clay, butter crocks, vent holes, double ceilings. Cellars below frost line. And above all, each other. No one mocked anymore. Not the old widow, not her pantry, not the boy who once fled into snow. Because now it wasn't her pantry. It was theirs. It was how they lived. And that story, whispered once about the widow who never lost her food, was now told proudly around fires, to newcomers like legend. Except this one was true, and they all knew it. One night, just before deep winter returned, Martha found something tucked behind her pantry door, a folded canvas tied with twine. She opened slow. Inside, a drawing in charcoal and boot polish, crude but careful, a cabin, a slope, a woman standing tall beside a boy, both holding lanterns against dark sky, and behind them others, blurry, faint, but there, holding baskets. At bottom, in childish scrawl, she dug down so we could rise. Martha folded it, pressed it between 2 stones in the pantry's back wall, and sealed the door again. Winter came as always, but this time the valley didn't brace for death. It prepared to outlast it, one pantry at a time, one fire at a time, one knock at a time. Answered not with fear, but with a loaf of bread. Because once they'd laughed, but now they dug. And in that earth they stored not just food. They stored faith.